Hello, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Jacques Demotes. I'm the director of ECRIN, and I'm very proud and happy to be invited to discuss with you the issue of multinational cooperation and new trial methodology to improve health decision. So I think we have to learn some lessons from the COVID crisis and from the way clinical research was conducted during the COVID-19 outbreak. Meaning, if you go to the Cochrane website, you can see that there are more than 3,000 interventional clinical trials on COVID, and most of them were not successful in leading to any conclusion on the COVID treatment. These include repurposing trial, currently the majority of them, because repurposing trial aim at exploring new indication for drugs that are already on the market. But we have now a new registration trial, and this will be amplified in the next few months. There are trials on treatment, but also trials on prevention, trials on vaccine. They affect different patient population, the elderly, the children, the obesity, diabetes. So there are differences also in the disease severity. Some trials deal with patients in the hospital, some deal with outpatients, some deal with patients in the intensive care unit. And this corresponds, of course, to different level of disease severity and to different treatment options to be tested. They test many products, and they test many products in different therapeutic domains, meaning that, for instance, there are treatment, antiviral treatment or immunomodulator treatment or convalescent plasma or corticoid or anticoagulant, and tomorrow we will have also monoclonal antibodies. This trial, and this is a major problem, this is the reason why there were so many of these trials. Most of the trials were funded through national funding scheme, and this was an obstacle to the multinational cooperation, and we will come back later on this issue of funding. And this results in many parallel overlapping trials addressing the same question in parallel in different countries without reaching the critical mass of patients, and leading also to competition for patient recruitment. So are there some multinational trials on COVID? Yes, and there are some multinational trials on COVID, but really this is the exception. The funding may come either from the combination of national funding or through the central budget of the European Union, which is the case now of the new project funded as a EU response project by the Horizon 2020. These multinational trials are also multi-arm trials, meaning that they are able to test in parallel at the same time different treatment options, different arms, or different therapeutic domain in the same trial. This is a very elegant way to recruit the patient, to improve, to boost the recruitment of patients, because in this case you can share the control arm, and introducing a new arm or activating a new therapeutic domain just requires an amendment to the master protocol instead of getting the full application process. These trials are adaptive, meaning that it's possible to open and close arms depending on the outcome of the trial. And this is true for the arm, this is true also for the new therapeutic domain. There are two categories of trials. Some are pragmatic trials with a minimal data collection, and others are more sophisticated and are suitable for registration by the medicine agencies. And of course, there is a need to coordinate these multinational clinical trials. And for this reason, the EU response project includes a work package where we are the leader of this work package, including the so-called trial coordination board, where the PI of the main multinational COVID trial, Solidarity, which is a trial initiated by WHO, Discovery initiated by France, and now extended to European countries in the context of the EU response project, the REMAP COVID, which is a trial on the intensive care unit, Recovery and Principle, two major UK trials, and the Active 3, which is a trial initiated by the NIH. All the PIs of this project and these trials get together every second week and discuss to better coordinate the activity and to avoid overlap or competition between the treatment arms. So what is now the situation in general beyond this COVID case? I think it's important to consider different aspects of multinational cooperation and neutral methodology. The first aspect is the issue of multinational clinical trials. ECRIN is an organization whose mission is to support multinational clinical trials in Europe, but we have to work together with investigator networks that provide access to the patient and that provide also the scientific content, and will address also the issue of funding. So first of all, you can understand here very easily that when the industry is running a clinical trial, in most cases, in dark blue on the left panel, you can see that in most cases, they run multinational clinical trials to access the patient and to access the medical expertise. Only in some cases, they don't go for multinational clinical trials. This is the case in Japan, in the US, in India, or in China. Whenever the patient population is large enough to recruit the patient in one single country, the industry doesn't go for multinational clinical trials. And this is interesting to see that on the right panel, the non-industry sponsored trials are in most cases national, and this is indicative of the complexity of running multinational clinical trials on the one hand, but also on the lack of multinational funding available for multinational clinical trials. So ECRIN is an organization whose mission is to support the conduct of multinational clinical trials and also to support the planning and the design of the trial. ECRIN is composed of a core team based in Paris and European correspondent based in each of the connected countries. And in each of the connected countries, we have a partner. And this partner is a network of clinical trial units having the capacity to manage the trial in the country. And just by coordinating the activities of these partners in the different countries, we are able to provide operational support to the management of multinational clinical trials. The membership of ECRIN now covers 80% of European population, meaning 350 million citizens, and this reaches the critical mass in terms of capacity to recruit the patient in the world. ECRIN, as I mentioned, is not a standalone organization because we have also to establish stable partnership with pan-European investigation network corresponding to the different medical specialties. So ECRIN is one of the horizontal component and instrument, a generic instrument, supporting the management of the clinical trials in general, but not specifically in one given domain of the disease area. And this is the reason why, through a series of projects funded either by IMI or by the Horizon 2020, ECRIN is able to establish stable partnership with the neuroscience community, for instance, with the infectious disease community, with the vaccine community, with the pediatric community, the rare disease community, and the medical device community. So, and we have other projects ongoing in order to establish and strengthen this organization. These communities provide two very important things for us. The first one is that they provide access to the patient because they correspond to investigator and having the capacity to enroll and then to investigate the patient. And second, they provide the scientific content, meaning that they are the one addressing the research question and developing the protocol for the study. So this is something very critical, and especially whenever the pan-European investigation network get a legal entity, it's possible then for us to sign contract and for the sponsor also to sign contract based on the commitment of the organization of the investigation network to recruit patients, and this facilitates and this avoids to select the site through complex feasibility studies. Another point I wanted to add regarding the multinational clinical trials is the critical issue of multinational funding. Some trials may be funded through a central budget coming, for instance, from the Horizon 2020 or the Innovative medicine initiative, but there should be other solutions for multinational clinical trial funding, either a common pot or virtual common pot, which correspond to, for instance, to the ERANET mechanism, whereby each country will contribute to the budget of the trial corresponding to the expenses run in the country. But another option would be the cross-border funding, by which the coordinating country would pay for the cost of the clinical trial, independently of whether the investigation will be run in the country or in another neighboring country. And I think with the principle of reciprocity, this cross-border funding should be a very easy way to fund multinational clinical trials. Now I come to the issue of the pragmatic trials. As I mentioned, some of the big trials are pragmatic trials and some are more sophisticated trials. Pragmatic trial meaning that the data collection is the minimal data collection. For instance, in the solidarity or the recovery trial, the data collection is restricted to a few outcomes, and the primary endpoint is the mortality at day 28. And with this, it's possible to demonstrate the efficacy or the lack of efficacy of repurposed drug. In turn, these trials are probably not suitable for marketing authorization purposes, and it is the reason why it's important to have more sophisticated trial, collecting more data with more outcomes, and including with safety outcomes that can be used and be accepted by a medicine agency and by the EMA and the FDA for registration purposes, which is the case, for instance, of the discovery trial. Then third aspect is the concept of adaptive platform trial, which is a way to study multiple treatment in the same trial. And whenever there is a disease condition where multiple treatment have to be tested, this is a very elegant solution to address this issue. Of course, it's better to have this as very large trial, and it's obviously possible to run platform trial in one single country, but it's probably far more efficient to run them in multiple countries. So what are these this platform trial? This corresponds to studies with a master protocol, meaning that there is a master protocol defining how the study is designed, what are the outcomes, what are the data to be collected, and so on. And once the master protocol is accepted by the competent authority and the ethics committee, with, for instance, one active arm and the control arm, then it's possible to add new arms just by an amendment of the master protocol. It's possible for a new arm, it's possible also for a new therapeutic domain. And so these trials are adaptive in the sense that they are open to new arms, and it's possible also to close an arm whenever we have an answer regarding the efficacy or the futility of this arm. It's possible also to change the control arm whenever a drug has been proven efficient for a given disease condition. It's possible to shift from the previous standard of care to this arm as being the control arm. So there's a lot of plasticity, and there is a perpetual permanent trial addressing one disease area. We have experience of designing this platform trial because we are involved in the so-called IMI EU Pearl project, which is a project coordinated by the Vall d'Hebron Hospital in Barcelona, and consisting of developing together with pharma companies 4 platform trials, one on depression, one on tuberculosis, one on NASH, and one on neurofibromatosis. So we developed the protocol, but we will not run the trial because the trial will be run later on as a competitive research activity by the industry independently of the public funding. But this was for us a very good experience in developing this master protocol. And this is used also now to develop in the context of the EU response project, master protocol for the COVID, for the new COVID trials. This multi-arm adaptive platform trial requires to define very carefully with all the stakeholders what should be the core outcome sets, what should be the endpoint, because of course the core outcome sets and the endpoint are common to all the arms, defining the control arms. It raised a lot of questions, meaning should there be a single sponsor? The European regulation requires to have a single sponsor. Who should be the sponsor? An industry partner, which is probably not accepted by the other industry partners. So there is a need to have a neutral partner or to make arrangement with co-sponsor, which will be possible with the next regulation on clinical trials. It may raise also IP issue regarding the adverse event reporting and the data sharing. But I think that this is basically a very important tool, and this tool could be implemented for each disease community, meaning for diabetes, for stroke, and so on, whenever there are more than one treatment to be tested in a given disease condition. Next point I wanted to address is the issue of the strategy for evidence-based site selection. You know that currently the site selection is something that is left to, in the academic world, it is based on a network of friends, usually. In the industry, it is left to the CRO who perform the so-called feasibility assessment. But there are now more and more objective criteria to select the sites. And this can be based on different strategies. The first one, for instance, is to have the selection site based on the investigator record on the publication, and it's possible through the mining, for instance, of clinicaltrial.gov to understand what is the activity of the investigator in terms of commitment, of involvement in trial. It's possible also to perform the mining of PubMed to understand what are the publication of this, and having something objective regarding the investigator activities in terms of participation in trial or in terms of publication. The second thing that can be done is to check the patient availability, meaning now it's possible to extract some information from the hospital, anonymized information, but checking whether the patient corresponding to the inclusion and exclusion criteria are existing present in the hospital, and it's possible to use this as one of the criteria to select based on the electronic health record the hospital. Another important point is the patient involvement, because the patient involvement is critical for the success of the trial, because it was demonstrated that when you involve the patient in the information leaflet, for instance, the rate of retention of patient, of acceptance of signing the informed consent and retention of the trial is higher. But it's important also to involve them in defining the trial objective, to design the trial together with the patient representative, to select the outcome measure together with the patient, which is done, for instance, in the COMET initiative, and to ask the patient to contribute to establishing the patient information leaflet, and to get committed to participate in the recruitment and the retention of the patient. So I think the involvement of the patient is one of the key instruments in the recruitment strategy. And then we come to the secondary use of data, meaning that for now, I would say 5 to 10 years, people consider the possibility of reusing either research data or healthcare data for research purposes. So this was achieved, for instance, in some example, for instance, the reuse of cohort or registry data to run clinical trial. And there are some initiative to explore how far it's possible to use for randomized clinical trial routinely collected data, meaning collected in the context of the healthcare, especially through the content of the data warehouse in the different hospitals through electronic health record or through electronic data capture. This is now, there are some cases demonstrating the feasibility of this initiative for one single hospital, meaning working inside the firewall of the hospital. Currently, it's far more difficult to consider this for multiple hospitals in multiple countries, but this will for sure be one of the solutions to facilitate the conduct of large trials in the future. But this will raise anyway a lot of questions. For the time being, what achieved is mostly this example of the randomized registry trial, where this means that the country has to establish, prior to the clinical trial, to establish a registry of patients. In this case, it is a registry of patients with myocardial infarction in Sweden. You know that the Nordic countries have a tremendous culture of developing registry of patients, and based on the patient enrolled in this registry, which is an extraction of the healthcare data for research purposes, the secondary use of the research data collected in this registry can be used to randomize the patient and to feed the CRF of a randomized clinical trial. So this was achieved. Of course, this trial is not suitable for registration, but it helped to compare two different healthcare strategy in patients with myocardial infarction, and for a very low cost, because one of the most prominent features of this trial is that the cost of the trial was in the range of 50 euros per patient. And the last slide refers to the so-called trial within cohort concept, meaning that it's possible also to use a cohort of patients and to select a subpopulation of the patient enrolled in the cohort based on exclusion and inclusion criteria, and then to randomize this patient. The ones who are randomized to the control group are just followed as any of the other cohort patients, and the one randomized for the intervention undergo specific intervention, and then it's possible to use this randomization to compare and to change this observational study into an interventional study, providing argument for causality. So this is not an easy task, but for the first time, this paper referred to the conduct of a tweak, a trial within cohort for drugs. So I think this is the way the trial will be conducted in not next year, but in the next 5 to 10 years. And we have to be prepared to organize ourselves, to organize the infrastructure, and to organize the competencies and the instrument to be able to address all the technical issues related to the conduct of this sort of trial. Thank you very much for your attention.